Thank you for tuning in. Remember to like and subscribe and write a review as it helps us grow, and share it with a friend as we have to keep talking about this shit. Now let's dive in and get started. Coming up on today's edition of Women and Money, the shit we don't talk about, our guest is Brian James, divorce mediator and parenting coordinator.
Brian has been a mediator for a long time, and there isn't a scenario probably that he has not experienced.
And what's cool about a mediator is if you can do it, then the costs for divorce are less expensive than hiring an attorney.
Yes, although mediation is not for everyone.
So let's take today to dive in and learn the ins and outs of mediation for anyone who's going through or considering divorce.
Gloria Steinem once said, "We will never solve the feminization of power until we solve the masculinity of wealth." Barbara Provost and Maggie Nielsen are the team at Purse Strings that will help you navigate the ins and outs of financial independence so that you can be financially fearless. This is Women and Money, the shit we don't talk about.
Welcome, Brian. Thank you for joining us today. We are eager to dive in and learn more about the world of mediation. Before we get started, can you share a little bit about you and your background?
Sure. So my name is Brian James. I'm a divorce mediator and parenting coordinator in private practice. Been doing this on my own for about the last 20 years. My background is in psychology and sociology, working with people in the courts, and now I work keeping people out of the courts, ideally.
I love it. Well, we are so glad to have you on today, and you are one of our Purse Strings approved professionals. And so we definitely want to dive in today and explore the topic of mediation for our listeners. So kind of straight out of the gate, what is mediation and when is it kind of best to go this route versus hiring an attorney?
Sure. So how I explain it to clients is this. Mediation is an alternative to people hiring lawyers and litigating in court, the normal things that people hear. Even though I've been doing this for 20 years, there's so many people that have never heard of mediation. So this is why I love talking about this. It is a process where the parties and myself, we work together to craft good parenting and financial agreements. Parenting agreements that are solid, that have their children's best interests at heart, that make sense, and that both parents know they can do. From the now all the way through their youngest one graduating from college and everywhere in between. And then you have a financial agreement. Illinois and Wisconsin, where I do most of my work, they have guidelines. Most states, when it comes to assets and debts, are right around 50-50. Mediation is about crafting a financial agreement that makes sense based on what they want to do going forward. Does someone keep the house? Does someone want more retirement accounts? Does someone want more cash? What about their debt? It's not about getting their best case scenarios. That's not what mediation is. If someone wants to kind of go for the jugular, war of the roses, mediation's not right for them. I don't want to work with people like that. I want to work with people that can come in and say, you know what? Yeah, we're not in the greatest spot right now, but we don't want to litigate in court. We don't want to spend $100,000. We don't want it to take 2 years. We don't want our kids to have to go to court or see a psychologist. We want to do this peacefully, civilly, and get on with our lives. And that's really what mediation is.
It's great because I do hear so many sad stories of people going through the courts and it dragging on and costing so much. So tell us, if you were to go through, or when someone goes through mediation, what typically is the time frame that it takes to really navigate getting those documents in order and getting it through the court?
So it really does depend on the clients. I have clients that are motivated and want this done yesterday. I have clients that say, you know what, we have no time frame. But on average, I meet with clients every couple of weeks. And the process usually takes, say, 3 to 4 months from start to finish the mediation process.
Wow.
It's gone quicker. I've done mediations in a month, and they've completed everything they need to because those people are just on the same page. They're in unison. They're good co-parents. They know their finances. No one needs to be educated. No one thinks someone's hiding money or stealing. They just work well together, but they want to get divorced. Unfortunately, then I've worked with clients that it takes a year to go through the mediation process because they're just the opposite, but they still don't want to fight in court because they know what will happen if they go to court.
And you mentioned, the parenting coordinating and then kind of the financials you're working through. And so not everyone is always well versed in how to split up a 401k and if you can afford the house and things like that. So are you the only professional usually in this conversation, or do you bring in different financial advisors or CDFA, certified divorce financial analysts, to kind of help with those financial decisions for people who, don't know all the ins and outs on, what would be the best, most 50-50 equal opportunity?
Both. So I'm a believer in education. I want to educate my clients on everything they need to know about their finances. I know a lot about mediation. I know a little bit about a lot of other things. So I will tell my clients, here's where my skill set with this is. Here's where my knowledge stops. Here's where I can refer you to someone that can help you with that, like a CDFA, like an accountant, like a financial advisor who will help them with the things that I just don't do a good job of explaining to them. And I because education is such a key, because as you guys know, this is their lives. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people going through a divorce financially, and I don't want to be rude and say mostly the wives going through a divorce, but don't hurt me for that, is that they don't know the finances. And it's not that they don't want to, just they had their roles, their spouse had their roles, and it worked for them. And I can never fault anybody for coming in and saying, well, I don't know this or I don't know this, because that's just what they morphed into. Mm-hmm. And I like people to be educated. They may not like the education they're getting sometimes because it doesn't meet what they want or what they think, but education and knowing what things mean is so important, especially with their finances. Because there are most people I work with, their finances are pretty normal. It's a 401k, it's some investments, bank accounts, hopefully a 529, few debts here or there. It's nothing huge. But other people, their knowledge of the finances is so little. And me as the mediator, I'm a neutral. So I have to make sure when I'm working with my clients that one person doesn't think I'm on the other person's side. So I can educate someone on the financials to a point, but I don't want to get so involved with that one person where the other one now thinks I'm on their side. Mm-hmm. Because then my neutrality and partiality comes into question. And I never want that.
So what kind of questions should women ask when they're asking or consulting with a mediator, learning about the best mediator for them?
Quite good questions to ask are, what's our experience? How long have we been doing this? What percentage of our work day is devoted to mediation? Because there's mediators that, maybe they do one mediation a week. Mm-hmm. That's not their primary focus. You're looking for someone that does this day in and day out. Because mediation, it's a skill set. It's one of those things, if you don't practice and use it, you're not going to be effective. Mm-hmm. And it's important because the things I say and the suggestions I make and the things we talk about, it changes people's lives. And that's daunting. It's sometimes scary, that the things I do is going to form people's lives going forward, but that's why I like it. So it's important to ask, because ultimately my clients need to trust me and be comfortable with me. And if for some reason, for whatever reason, they don't like the sweater I'm wearing, and all of a sudden it puts them off and they start to lose confidence in me, they should go to another mediator. I can refer them to other mediators because I have colleagues all over that do this because I believe in the process. So it's always important to have that comfort level with the mediator. It's also to say, what's your knowledge of this? What's your knowledge of that? I always say all questions are good questions. No matter how small or insignificant or personal you may think is, ask me. You're going to get my honest, candid answer.
Yeah, there are a huge amount of decisions that you're really helping them make and kind of finalizing due to finances, due to, when you see your children. So you definitely do want to be super comfortable with these people and make sure you can trust them, as these are, lifelong decisions that are really taking place at the table.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. Someone comes into a mediation thinking that they deserve 80% of the assets, either because they're the primary breadwinner, or they did all this work on the house and they think they deserve that and they get in their head, or maybe a friend or a coworker or something online told them that that's what they should do. It's my job, unfortunately, to say, well, that's not appropriate. And I always try to empathize with people. and understand why they're saying and doing the things they do. It's one of those things that makes a good mediator, in my opinion. But it's helping them to understand that there's rules. There are guidelines. You can't just agree to anything you want and a judge is going to sign off on it. There's a point where an agreement becomes unconscionable, which means a judge is going to look at this agreement and say, there's no way in hell I'm signing this because it is going to hurt this person so bad. It's my job to make sure that it never gets to that point. So I'll talk to my clients about red flags. You're getting away from that 50-50, 55-45 split of assets or child support or maintenance to a point where I think a judge might say no. Now, I can't guarantee that because the judge has the final say so. No one should ever tell someone through a divorce they can tell you what a judge is going to do or that they can guarantee this, because that's not true. The only guarantee is if you reach a good agreement, a judge is going to sign off on it. So it's getting those expectations out there. And it's one thing I try to do during a consultation or during a first meeting with clients when I go through what I call my issues checklist. It's everything parenting and financial wise they have to do. So I get out there in the forefront kind of what the guidelines are, what the rules are. In the state of Illinois, we have formulas for child support and maintenance. Those are guidelines. I get, of course, people who want to pay always want to pay less. And one of my questions is, okay, why don't you pay more then? You want to pay less. Why not? Isn't it appropriate to pay more? Well, that's not appropriate. Then why is it appropriate to pay less? Or someone who wants more? So it's kind of questioning them because, again, they're angry, they're sad, they're mad. Their friend got this in their divorce, but your divorce is 100% different than theirs. It's a complete 180. So I always caution people about listening to other people or reading other people's parenting agreements and marital settlement agreements and saying, well, that's what I want, when it's not right for their situation, or they really don't understand what it means.
And I think that's so important because we hear so often in kind of the divorce realm of, well, this is what my friend said, this is what they got, this is, something I saw online from places that, every state has their different rulings. And, every relationship is just so different. You can't compare apples to apples because we're not cookie cutter. None of us are. And so we have to always find something for our unique needs in our unique family for sure.
And that's where, like, for you guys, why you're doing this is you have trusted professionals to refer people to. Again, they might not, the clients may not like the answers, but they're going to get candid, honest information and education. Because, again, that's so key.
Right. Yeah. Here at Purse Strings, Brian, we love having professionals like you in our directory so women can come and just find a mediator, find a CDFA, find whoever they need in order to make the best financial decisions for themselves and their families, because none of us are cookie cutter. None of us have the same situation. We all have different needs. So, can you tell us, like, what are some of the big, what are mistakes women make? What trips them up a little bit that they should be aware of? I heard you say one thing was just not really knowing the money. Not that that's a bad thing. I mean, you'll learn about it, and you have professionals that can help walk through that. But what do you think some things that might trip them up? And I believe some of it might be, and I've heard people say that, I thought I was going to get, 80%. And I'm so, PO'd at my mediator attorney because I'm only getting this much, when really you're not setting those rules.
Yeah. And it's setting those expectations for people is so important. Getting them grounded. That's so important. I always say to my clients, I go, don't listen to anybody except people that are going to be honest with you. Because friends want to give you their best case scenario, your best case scenario. Attorneys, a lot of times will give you your best case scenario. I'll talk best case scenarios, but I'll also talk worst case scenarios. And this is what could happen if you go to court. But some big mistakes that people make, agreeing to things that are going against themselves, or they are negotiating against themselves. Like I have a couple right now. It's a maintenance case, spousal support, alimony, whatever you want to call it. And Illinois has a guideline, and they meet the requirements for the guideline. The payer wants to pay less. He has no rational reason why. He just doesn't want to pay it. And as we're talking, I had to say to them, you guys understand that so-and-so is negotiating against themselves. And the other person's like, what do you mean? They're not. We're negotiating. I go, yeah, but this is the guideline. Why aren't we negotiating higher? Because that makes sense also. So it's putting those expectations and realities out there where you're not negotiating against yourself, or you're not trading things that aren't appropriate. Like, again, I hate to say it, let's go male, female. Dad earns the money. Mom has the kids. This is what they morphed into during their marriage. Worked for them for a long time. Some people will say, well, fine, I'll give you more of the assets if I get the kids more. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that may work depending on that person's financial situation. But many times if you put it on paper, and this is where like a CDFA can help, they're going to be broken 4 years.
Yeah.
And the financial agreements, once they're done, they're set in stone. But a parenting agreement and a schedule can always go back to court at a certain point. So there's things that are black and white, but there's also things that can be revisited. And there are some people that know this, and they're devious, and they do this stuff to their advantage. So when people start to do things like that, I'll step back a little bit and say, okay, let's go through this agreement and see what it looks like. Let's put that on paper. Okay. You have a part-time job right now and you don't put into 401k. You're agreeing to give up, say, $400,000 in retirement to get your children 2 extra nights a week. Okay, let's work through that. Great. You got this. He got this. Here's what it looks like 20 years from now.
Yes.
And that's where that CDFA can help and say, here's what your retirement looks like. Here's what their retirement looks like. And maybe you now have the kids 50-50 because the courts deem that appropriate 3 years from now. So it's really making sure that people aren't doing emotional things, which is easy for me to say. Divorce is emotional, but for people to be the most effective when they mediate, it has to be no emotions. These are business decisions. Your children are your business. They're your lives. And I really focus on that with people. Same thing with your finances. I'm not saying you have to argue and dig and crawl for stuff, but these are your things. And I don't care who earned the money, who had the kids all the time. When you're getting divorced, you're going to give up some of those things. And you have to understand that. You can't say, well, I want the kids 90% of the time and I want 60% of the assets. Most of the time, that's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. Yes, sometimes it does, but let's go with the bell curve of this is what happens 99% of the time. Here's your extremes. And usually those extremes have valid reasons why they're the extremes.
The Institute for Divorce Financial Analysts, IDFA, is a proud sponsor of Purse Strings. IDFA is the premier organization dedicated to the certification, education, and promotion of the use of financial professionals in the divorce arena. IDFA provides specialized training to accounting, financial, and legal professionals in the field of pre-divorce financial planning. To find out more about earning the Certified Divorce Financial Analyst designation, visit institutedfa.com.
It's scary to think, because I've heard even financial advisors who've gone through divorce say, I wanted just to get through it so quickly, and I gave up a lot of money, and that can't be changed. And I have a lot of regret around that. So we hear a lot of women saying, I just was tired and I kind of gave in. And now I have regrets because I'm struggling financially. So that's a really, really important component of this as well.
And I run into that too, even in my mediation clients, because I'll draft up the agreements they're wanting to do to a point. Mm-hmm. There's times I've told people, if you want to agree to this, I'm not working with you. I'm not putting my name on this document because this just screws this person so bad. And it's usually the woman financially. I don't want my name on that. If you want my name on this, here are some suggestions to get this in balance. Or I will make sure to refer that client to an attorney that I know is going to really hit them at, why are you agreeing to this? It's almost a point like they'll say, no offense, but are you stupid? Why are you, in the nicest way possible?
Yeah.
Why are you agreeing to this? Because this is like your worst case scenario if you went to court. Why are you agreeing? Well, I just, like you said, Barb, I want to get it done. No. Please don't just agree to stuff to get it done because you will regret it in the future. Because I work with those people who regret what they agreed to. They'll come back to me 6 months, a year after their divorce and want to revisit. I'm like, there's certain things you can't. I'm sorry. I don't know why you agreed to those, and I really caution my clients when they start going down that road. But at the same time, I got to remain neutral.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say it to both parties, this is not appropriate. And of course, the person who's getting the better deal is like, well, this is what we agreed to. And there's sometimes, and this is kind of when mediation is not appropriate, is that person is pressuring the other person when we're not together, threatening them, denying this, saying that. If you don't agree to this, I'm doing this. They control all the money. So you have things that are working behind the scenes. And my background long time ago was in domestic violence. So trying to see those things that might be domestic violence. It could be financial abuse. Mm-hmm. It could be emotional. It could be psychological. It could be physical. Lots of different things. But both parties have to be at a level playing field. And that's where then sometimes divorce coaches come in. I have people that work with divorce coaches during the process because I can't be there to be their coach because I'm neutral. I can help a little bit, but I got to maintain that neutrality. And that's why during the process, I'll refer them to a coach. I'll refer someone to a financial person. A lot of my clients come to me before they've hired attorneys. I'll refer one of them to an attorney at this point, just to have someone looking at it from their side who can then guide them during this process.
Yeah, so I guess that would be when, one of our questions is, when would it be better to have an attorney? It sounds like it's that scenario.
That scenario, when someone lies, when someone hides stuff, or when someone, people like to throw around the word narcissist. There are narcissists out there. That is true. But when someone refuses to agree to, who gets this pen in my hand because they just want it, those are people that at some point aren't appropriate for mediation. And I'll have, I usually can figure that out within the first session or two. And I'll have what I say is my come to Jesus talk. Is these things in itself, if you break them down, it's not rocket science. It's education, it's understanding. If you can't agree to something this simple, like who gets Martin Luther King Day, how are you going to agree to bigger things when we get down the road? Because some people just want to hurt their spouse. And that's when I don't want to waste people's time and money. And I don't want to listen to people argue and fight constantly and never come to agreements. So there's been times where that started and I've said, well, if you're going to work with me, you need to go to counseling. You need to work on your individual issues, your parenting issues, your communication issues, and then come back to me. Because I want to make sure that those agreements are good in the end and not rushed, not pushed, not threatened. They're good.
I love the amount of resources that you bring into the conversation and the amount of awareness you have of, you understand that there could be different kinds of abuse or even, just kind of that verbal abuse and intimidation, going on behind when they're not meeting with you, Brian. And so it's so great that I can tell you're so aware of these things and having these resources. As you know, it's a difficult process and you got to stay in your lane, but there are all these other resources, which when I always look for different professionals to work with, knowing that they have that trusted community to refer me to and understand that this is their lane and they're specialists for these other lanes is so much more exciting to me because I know that they're doing their job so well and they know their own limitations, which to me is important to kind of to have and to build that trust.
Yeah, because you guys know there's so many people in our industries, especially with divorce, that go beyond what they should be doing.
Yeah.
Will say and do things that aren't appropriate. And, you get someone who's emotional and they try to talk them into stuff. And it's like, no, that's not good for them. We're supposed to be working for the clients.
So tell us what it's like to work with you. Like how many meetings typically do they come to? What does it cost to work with a mediator? Can you share more about that?
I meet with clients usually every couple of weeks. Meetings are 2 hours at a time. In between the meetings, I always give homework to do. So things that the parties can do together and things to do separately, like, gathering financial documents. You have to gather your own financial documents. I have a secured folder that they put everything into so everybody can see the financial documents. Kind of that you need to be able to look at this stuff. Even if you don't understand what it is, I want you to know what it is and it's there. And then it's nice because I can pull a document down onto my screen and we can go through it together. And someone says, I don't understand this on my tax return. If I understand what it is, I'll say, well, here's what it is. If not, I'll say, that's a great question for your accountant, or here's a couple of accountants. And so every meeting we work on certain things. I typically go with parenting agreements first and then financial agreements second. But I'll always tell my clients, if there's something financial that's most important right now or causing you guys stress or angst, let's talk about that now. Let's get that out there, because if that's a roadblock stopping you from doing other things, let's get that out of the way. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times agreements will flow from there. And then it's usually, say, 3, 4, 5, 6 meetings, depending on how motivated they are, how agreeable they are. And then they're done with the mediation process. Cost-wise, my rate is $250 an hour. I have a $2,000 retainer that is due when hired, and that buys them 8 hours up front.
Got it.
And that 8 hours / $2,000 will cover the mediation process for probably 40 to 50% of my clients.
Wow, that's great.
Some people go under. Some people, of course, go over. But people always ask, how long is it going to take? What's it going to cost? Here's a pretty good average if they're motivated and can do homework. I have clients that I'll give them all the homework. They come in the next session, haven't done anything, and they want to go fast, and they don't want to spend any more money. And I'm like, but you have to do the work. This is what this is. This is your life. This isn't my life. I'm not going to do the work that you need to do because I don't have to live this in the end. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We're going to see each other for 2, 3, 4 months, and ideally, you'll never see me again. I always say to people, my best clients are the ones I never see again. Yeah. I don't want repeat business from them unless it's just doing something normal. But other times, if they're coming back, there's an issue, and I don't like that.
And so I have one more question for you today, and that's really closing up this process. I know when you do get an attorney and you go to court, and it all happens kind of in the courtroom. So when you do mediation and that's complete, is then everything signed off by a judge? Or when you sign the document, is everything complete? What's kind of that end step that we're done?
So mediation is a confidential, non-binding process. At the end of mediation, I draft up a document called a memorandum of understanding that spells out black and white and detailed every parenting and financial agreement they have. In the end, I go through that with them together just one final time to make sure they understand everything. Because, on these Zoom calls, I can see your eyes. It's nice. It's not like we're in an office where someone's 15 feet away. I can see people's eyes. So when I can see their eyes go over, like this, or I'm like, did you understand that? Let's talk about that. And I'll say, what? I'm feeling like we're not on the same page here. Let me re-explain that again. I'll be the bad guy. I'll be the one to say, I'm not really sure what you just said. Can you explain it to me again? Then ultimately it goes to court. And there's different ways that people can go to court. You can each have an attorney. So some people want to have someone looking at this agreement from their perspective, which I'm a believer in. Whatever the clients want to do it. Yes, it might cost you an extra $1,500 in the end, but that peace of mind and knowing is more important than worrying about it for the next 15 years.
Right.
Or having it light a fire under you and you get angry all the time and then you can't co-parent well. Some people, a lot of my clients, one person will retain the attorney and the other person will go what they call pro se or self-represented litigant, I think is what they're called now. You go without an attorney. Because ultimately that attorney, though they're there to represent their client, they have an obligation to, they're not there to try to blow it up. They're not there to say, oh my gosh, you can get so much better here. You can do this, you can do that. And those are usually attorneys that I like and trust.
So once you get an attorney or not, you go to the court and then the judge does that final signature to call it a day. Yep.
And almost all the time mediated agreements are signed off on by judges.
Got it.
Because you have the mediator, you have an attorney, 2 attorneys, and then you have a judge. They're not going to reject that agreement.
Interesting.
Which is what they're looking for. They're looking to go to court ideally one time and be done. Because no one likes to go to court. It's nice in some of the counties in Illinois, court for a divorce, they call them prove-ups, which is the day of the divorce, are being done by a Zoom. So the parties don't even need to go in person, which is nice for them. Because court's scary.
Okay, so let us ask you our last question, which is something we ask all of our podcast guests, and that is, what's one piece of financial advice, Brian, that you'd give to women who want to be financially fearless in 2024?
Understand your finances. Educate yourself on your finances, no matter how it is that you get that information. Everybody processes and receives information differently. Do you read it? Yes. Do you contact a trusted professional? Do you have a friend who can help you? I don't care what it is, but make sure you're educated as to what stuff is and what it means. This is for now and into the future. Mm-hmm. Because if you didn't do anything with the finances, not that you couldn't, you just chose not to. I have right now, I have a lady, she's a doctor and she's the primary breadwinner, but she knows nothing about the finances. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you get divorced, you have to know the things that you didn't know during your marriage. And yeah, I'm not going to say that's fine that you didn't then, but there's no excuse for not knowing it now. And please don't come back 3 years from now and say, well, I didn't know. It is your choice. You have to own up to this, that you didn't know this. Like people that don't know how to do this, don't know how to do that. Okay, fine. You never needed to, but now you need to. And some people, unfortunately, they're so stuck because they're getting divorced. They're clouded. They just can't move on. That's where therapy is great. Mm-hmm. That's why I have a lot of therapists I work with to help people with that, so they can get to that understanding where they can actually work on their finances and educating themselves. And that's where the professionals that you're working with, you have to trust them. Mm-hmm. There's respectful criticism. You can respectfully disagree. You know, I've had to say to people, I asked you to do 1 page here of this document. Why couldn't you do it in the last month? Well, I just didn't get around to it. Well, you have to take control of yourself. You have to take control of your life. And maybe this isn't what you wanted to do 6 months ago, but this is happening now. And taking control and being proactive is so important, because that will help you with your finances going forward. It will help you with how you're working with your co-parent, how you work with life going forward.
Yeah. And we always say it's a life skill, knowing your finances. And that's what Purse Strings is all about. Just what you said. We're here for women who want to learn and need to learn what they need to know to make the best financial decisions for themselves, their families, their businesses, if they're business owners. And we give all that information for free right on our website. And then when they need to make a move and they're ready to make an investment, or maybe, Brian, they need you as a mediator, they need an attorney, they need a CDFA, we also have those resources that we have personally vetted as those professionals who serve a female market. So we're here for those women. We're here for all women who really want to live a life of being financially fearless and take control of their finances. So thank you, Brian, for being one of our Purse Strings approved professionals. If you want to reach out to Brian, you can find him at pursestrings.co. His professional webpage is on our site. Brian, what's your website?
Easiest way to reach me is www.yourdivorce.org.
Got it. www.yourdivorce.org. We'll put that in the show notes as well. For today, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Brian. Thanks, Maggie. And let's continue to live a life in which we are financially fearless. Thank you, everyone.
Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.